everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Johns Hopkins, and I'm the director of Baltimore Heritage. I've been pleased to work with a number of people in Auchentoroly Terrace over the years, and with Dan Midvidi on this project as a supporter for the last couple of years at least. Today, we're going to hear from a few people, neighbors, elected officials, the mayor, all of whom helped make this project possible. But before I turn the microphone over, I would like to say a few words about the historic importance of the place that we're standing right now. First off, we're standing at the gateway of three important historic places. We are in Auchentoroly Terrace, a designated historic district, and I recall being a brand new director at Baltimore Heritage almost 15 years ago when the city's designation came through, and a little bit more recently at the behest of Dan Midvidi, the National Register nomination came through. So we're in the middle of a historic district. We are also at the gateway to Druid Hill Park, historic Druid Hill Park, also on the National Register of Historic Places. I don't think we need a register listing to remind us how important the park has been to so many generations of Baltimoreans. And finally, if we look this way, out from Druid Hill Park, we are in the gateway of Gwynns Falls Parkway, which was recently listed as a Baltimore City landmark, in part for its importance of the landscape architect Frederick Law Olmsted. So now we've got kind of a context for where we are. What about this block of Auchentoroly Terrace, the 3400 block? I like to think of it as the alpha and the omega of historic Auchentoroly Terrace. The alpha, it contains the oldest houses in the neighborhood, the 19 square block neighborhood, built in 1876 by John Oram, one for his daughter, one for his son. They're easily identifiable. If you walk up half a block, you will see two enormous mansions, not too bad for the son and daughter, but that got Auchentoroly Terrace started. The omega, the final houses in the neighborhood, were built here in 1928. Those are also easily recognizable. They're the smaller, more modest houses, also up closer to the synagogue. And where does this house that we're standing in fit? 3400 Auchentoroly Terrace comes somewhere in the middle, 1909. It was built as one of the fancy row houses and kept up its historic grandeur up until about the 1980s. Fixing this building will have an oversized impact. The building's vacancy and dilapidation stand out because the rest of the block looks so good. And in fact, the adjacent block looks so good. The houses and their grand architecture are the starting point. The neighbors, who have done such a fantastic job in keeping them up, are the finishing point. And you can't drive by here or walk by here and not notice this row in particular of just fantastic, wonderful houses. You also can't drive by here or walk by here over the last 20 years and not notice this building. Whenever I do it, and I've done it thousands of times, I always wonder to myself, what's going on with the corner building? It looks terrible. Sorry, Dan, it did look really terrible. And when there's somebody with me in the car, I usually wonder out loud why it looks so terrible, and they join me in commiserating how this house is dragging down the rest of the block and the rest of the blocks. But we are embarking on a new day here today, and to get us started, I'd like to invite Mayor Catherine Pugh to the podium. Mayor Pugh has been a friend of historic neighborhoods for years and years in the General Assembly as mayor, and she's even put her own skin in the game, so to speak, by launching her small business in a historic neighborhood, Pigtown, which is also a designated historic Main Street. Thank you, Mayor Pugh, for all of your hard work and for your commitment, and we are all yours.
This is like a big sigh. I know Mr. Braverman is so sick and tired of these texts that I've sent over the years, the conversations that I've had about the importance of redoing this building. Because I know the neighbors in this community. They know I've run by this park. I've participated in community meetings. And one of the things that I said when I got elected mayor is that we are going to get this building done, because it has been undone for too long. And these folks in this neighborhood and community have invested for decades. They've lived here for decades. They're proud of their neighborhood. And I used to say when I drove by that if this was any place else in America, across from one of the greatest parks in America, we would have done it. And so we're doing it. And so I just want to say to all of those who are gathered, Councilman Leon Pinkett, I was the council person for this district. Councilman John Bullock, Michael Braverman, thank you, thank you, thank you, and Dan Midvadi, thank you, thank you. And Barbara Dandy, you know, and I know, and all of us know, I see all of my comrades here from the neighborhood. You all know how much we've cared, how much you all continue to care, and how many discussions we've had around doing this building. Johns Hopkins, I want to say to you, and that's not to be confused with the university, but the Baltimore Heritage, thank you for understanding how important this is to all of us. I just want to thank everybody for joining us because this is really a team effort. Public and private partnerships do work, even when they do take a little bit too long, but at least we're moving forward. I'm so pleased with the 3 accessible units because the city is in great need of additional dwellings. The developer, Meadow, has been working exclusively in West Baltimore, I think now since 2010. We really do appreciate this commitment to this part of our city. But we also recognize that the restoration of this 3400 Auchentoroly Terrace building represents a great, great accomplishment for our neighborhoods and communities. I'm just excited because I know what this has meant to these folks. We've sat, Jackie, in community meetings. We've talked about this, and all of the members of the community that are here. The Greater Mondawmin community, the Auchentoroly Terrace community, all of us have been engaged in this effort to really get this work done. So we're moving forward, and I want to acknowledge our comptroller, Joan Pratt, for being here as well. This is just an important piece of real estate, and I know that the neighbors who've hung on and who continue to hang on, have no intentions of going anywhere, are so glad to see this finally taking place. So again, thank you all, and so I get to present Dan with this citation. I really should be handing it off to the community. No, but Dan, this is for you. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you. But let me just say to the community, I know you all have been patient. We've all been patient. But I think the thing that really, really warms my heart is to look around this room at the residents, the people who didn't give up, the people who stayed, the people who've prayed, the people, oh, there's my stained glass man. How you doing? That's really great stained glass work, you all. That's a whole story for another time. But again, the neighbors of this particular community, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We're excited. I know you all are. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd now like to invite up to the podium the gentleman behind this project, Dan Midvidi of Meadow Properties. This project clearly was not an easy one to take on. I'm looking at Michael Braverman, who has bared with us for probably decades now. But Dan is no stranger to tough projects. He has been working in the Upton neighborhood, historic Upton neighborhood, not too far from here for several years, doing fantastic work, tackling vacant row houses that are in need of attention. We, in fact, as Baltimore Heritage, gave Meadow Properties and Dan an award 2 years ago for his work, not just in a community, but as part of a community. And I am sure that his approach to this project with the community leaders here today is in that same vein. It is not working in a house in a community, it's working with the community. Dan, thank you, and here you go.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. On September 12th, 2010, where we stand today, 3400 Auchentoroly Terrace suffered a devastating fire that resulted in the collapse of several walls and the total gutting of this building. Baltimore City came to the rescue, spending in excess of $100,000 installing new floor joists, repairing the brick outside, installing window lintels, and overhauling the structure itself. It has taken us 5 years to get here today, but thanks to the modernization of the Baltimore zoning code and one visionary lender, the Reinvestment Fund, Michael Picorni from the Reinvestment Fund is here amongst us today, and the support of many, we've made it. To name but a few of our supporters, I'd like to, of course, mention Madam Mayor Catherine Pugh. We've been working with the mayor since the time that she was a state senator, and the overwhelming support that we've received from Councilman Pinkett's office. Habitat for Humanity of the Chesapeake is here. I know Layla is here representing them. Thank you for your support. Community Development Network has been a supporter. The zoo, I know, is here today. They have been a supporter of this project. Parks and People, I think Stephen Preston, to my right. Jackie Caldwell from the Greater Mondawmin Coordinating Council, thank you. Jackie actually introduced us to the lender, so that was terrific, thank you. And of course, most importantly, Barbara Dandy, Donna Cypress, and all of the officers and members of the new Auchentoroly Terrace Community Association. Thank you. I also want to draw everyone's attention to the general contractor, Curtis Miles. When Curtis completes in September, we'll have 16 beautiful apartments to rent. Almost all will have park and conservatory views. The building, and indeed each of the unique apartments, will be beneficiaries of the Baltimore Energy Initiative loan that has made this project possible. Each of the apartments will have energy smart stainless steel appliances, ultra high efficiency furnaces and air conditioning, hybrid hot water heaters. No apartment will be the same. There'll be 3 accessible units that are going to be built to stricter uniform federal accessibility standards. I want to make a second plug, which is for the Druid Park Lake Drive Planning Group, which Councilman Pinkett has led. Too many of the West Baltimore residents have to navigate 8 lanes of traffic to get to this beautiful park. And I know that through that group's efforts and the councilman's efforts, we'll continue to invest the time and energy necessary to make the transformative efforts that are required. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. I now have the distinct pleasure of welcoming to the podium Miss Barbara Dandy. When I was a brand new director at Baltimore Heritage 16 years ago, my first role was to be cheerleader for Miss Dandy in her efforts to get Auchentoroly Terrace designated as a historic district, in her efforts to get the fantastic sign that I can almost see out there erected, and along the way to do so much for this neighborhood and this park. Thank you. I know for 19 years you have been president of the new Auchentoroly Terrace Association and are on the board of the Greater Mondawmin Coordinating Council. Thank you for all your work and continuing work.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon all. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for this celebration and ribbon cutting of 3400 Auchentoroly. Before I begin, could I ask my officers that are here, block captains, residents that are here to please join me? Move quickly.
All right.
Madam Mayor used to always say all of your residents have titles. Yes, they do. I bring greetings from historic Auchentoroly Terrace. My name is Barbara Anderson Dandy, proud president and #1 ambassador of Auchentoroly Terrace Association. we're overly excited about the long overdue renovation of 3400 Auchentoroly Terrace. For too long, in fact, decades and decades and decades, this fire-damaged building has been an eyesore for our community. It's the gateway to Druid Hill Park, the Baltimore Zoo, and is a major thoroughfare. The 16 units with 3 accessible units are much needed housing to potential tenants. 3400 is significant because of our local historic designation for 3400 through 2700 Auchentoroly Terrace. And in 2015, we received, we were placed on the National Register of Historic Places. How cool was that? Also, with the completion of 3400, it will complement the work being done by the Neighborhood Housing Services on Gwynns Falls Parkway, which is a part of the historic Olmsted Parkway. Dan McVitie has really been engaged with the community throughout the process, attending meetings, monthly meetings with schematic drawings and updates via email. He also participated in our walking tour with Councilman Leon Pinkett on several occasions, and for the 40th District's leadership conference at the Biotech, he was there, and for the 7th year, I think, Madam Mayor, we won again this year. We won a monetary donation for our treasury. So again, Dan has really been engaged with the community. Also, we went to zoning, and I'd like to thank all of those who wrote letters of support. If you're here, just raise your hand. Thank you, Parks and People, Jackie Caldwell, GMCC, Councilman, and so forth and so on. So we thank you. We got it done. So thanks again for your support. The 16 units, and I had skipped over that, with accessible units are much needed housing for potential tenants. So special thanks to Dan and his team for bringing back this beautiful mansion, and to Curtis Miles Contracting Company for hiring several residents for the project. We thank you. We're looking forward to the grand opening. Additionally, we're looking at one building at a time to be renovated and rehabbed. At this time, 34, I believe 36 is being worked on. It's the huge building up the street in the middle that sits back. Mr. Richard Abramson is working on that. Plus, we have another house in Dr. Bell's block, the 3300 block, and I think Dale, where are you? Dale is here. He just signed on the dotted line. I believe last Wednesday. So you see, I have another right hand and a left hand to help me. So I thank you. We're looking forward again to the grand opening, and I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Dandy. I'm going to keep us rolling along here. I have the pleasure now to introduce Councilman Leon Pinkett. City Council District 7, who represents Auchentoroly Terrace as well as several historic neighborhoods. I've had the pleasure to get to know Councilman Pinkett as he has willingly jumped into several thorny issues in some of his other historic neighborhoods. He has always come in on the side of listening to residents, keeping an open mind, and acting decisively, and on the side of making the neighborhood a better place. His help with this project is clearly in that same vein. Thank you, Councilman Pinkett.
Good afternoon, everyone. One way to make certain that an elected official gives brief remarks is to make them leave their coat in the car. So you won't have to worry about me talking very long. And Ms. Anderson Danny, I want to don't give Dale too much credit because he lived in Reservoir Hill. He's one of my neighbors, and the only reason I let him move over here is because it's still in the 7th district. So, yeah, all right, Dale, we still looking for you. But not all projects are created equal. To some who just don't know, this might just seem like the renovation of just another blighted property. But because of where this property is positioned on this prominent corner, it is the gateway to the communities of the greater Mondawmin community, and even to West Baltimore, the city. And not only is it a gateway, this project presents a catalyst for future development in this set of communities. When you combine it with, as was said earlier, the traffic alignment study that DOT just announced for Druid Park Lake Drive, when you talk about the Porch Project, when you talk about the improvements that are going to be made to Druid Hill Park, there's just a great energy that's happening in this community. I think Madam Mayor said it the best, that if this community was anywhere else in the nation, next to the asset that Druid Hill Park is, we would have renovated or redeveloped it a long time ago. But the time has come now. The leadership is in place to really make this community the jewel that it already is. It is. The people in this community are already a jewel. Now it's time to make certain that the properties line up with that vision. And I just want to take the remainder of my time to just thank some individuals. Oftentimes when I don't think people appreciate that some of the greatest work that is done by our elected officials doesn't happen in the public spotlight. It doesn't necessarily happen in committees or hearings. It happens when those elected officials bring people together and get them at a table and put them in a process to get things done. And so I want to thank, in their absence, Council President Jack Young and Senator Hayes for their leadership in making certain that everybody was at the table and that we had a pathway to getting this project done. In addition, I want to thank Commissioner Braverman, because if not for his vision and leadership some years ago, we wouldn't even have a building to even redevelop. He saw the great need, and he also recognized how important this property was to this set of communities and made the proper investments to stabilize it so that when the proper developer came along, we would have a project to move forward with. And then Ms. Barbara Anderson Dandy, you cannot have a better advocate for this community than Ms. Barbara. And I think we've already acknowledged her, but I think we should acknowledge her again. And then lastly, Dan Midvidi. I think the word that best described is stick-to-itiveness. There are many developers that would have given up on this project a long time ago. And matter of fact, I think you tried to give up, but we wouldn't let you. But as a result, things just came together. The financing came together. The partners came together. And I'm just excited that in September it will be a lot warmer when we cut the ribbon, and then I'll look appropriate in here with just a jacket. But thank you all for coming out and celebrating this great event.
Thank you, Councilman. Next up, we have our comptroller, Joan Pratt, who I have also gotten to know over the last decade and a half as a champion of historic buildings and historic neighborhoods citywide, from civil rights sites downtown to important historic places at the neighborhood level. Thank you for your work, and thank you for your work here today.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As it has been said, Auchentoroly Terrace is a neighborhood of architecturally distinctive and historically prominent properties, and the renovation of this mansion will not only enhance the beauty of this neighborhood and the city, but it will also add to the city's tax base. I would like to thank Mr. Midvidi, Mr. Miles, and Mr. Braverman, and all those partners in the restoration of this project. Your vision, your planning, your leadership, and commitment are truly appreciated, and everyone here shares in your aspiration for the future of Auchentoroly Estates. And in closing, I look forward to standing here as a proud supporter of upon the successful completion of this project and its grand opening. Thank you.
All right, and finally, if the man of the hour is Dan Midvidi, the other man of the hour is clearly Michael Braverman. I do have the pleasure of introducing Michael, who has worked for over 30 years, dedicated to Baltimore City as a prosecutor, as head of code enforcement, and now as the first person to fill the newly reconstituted post as Commissioner of Housing. Michael and I have worked together for the last several years, a lot of the time on what to do with the city's overabundance of vacant housing. As an advocate for historic buildings, as a chief advocate for historic buildings, Michael and I have not always started out on the same page. I will say that there almost is never a historic building that I haven't fallen in love with, no matter how dilapidated, abandoned, or small. I think on a scale of 1 to 10, I often come out as an advocate as a number 11, and I know that it has taken all of Michael's patience to deal with me at times. But even when we don't start out on the same page, Mr. Braverman is honest, he's open, and he is 100% committed to Baltimore City. We are very lucky to have him as our Commissioner of Housing, and we're very lucky to have him here today. Thank you, Michael.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I can't imagine in all these years, Mayor, the renovation of one vacant building making so many people happy. But this is the building. This really is. It is a unique building. And I want to thank Miss Dandy and Miss Almond and Jackie for keeping the pressure on all these years, for having the vision for how you want to see your community be, for holding us accountable. It wasn't a question about whether we were or weren't going to invest the money to stabilize this building. This building needed to be renovated. What it represents, what the building is, what it means for Baltimore, what it means for the neighborhood, it had to get done. Now, I wanted to mention, I'm also very happy about that, because you may or may not know, but this building was on my report card with the mayor, right? This building, every day, this building, right? So a lot of thanks go out, but also I didn't realize, Jackie, you saved my job by connecting Dan to TRF, to the reinvestment fund.
Let's go to prime rib.
Yeah, I owe you. So we have to thank our lenders, and we're very lucky, Dan, to have a creative CDFI like TRF in town. And I think you have funding also from Columbia Bank. I know Columbia Bank was here. We're excited to have them in Baltimore as well. We're glad we invested in the building, and it really represents what's happening around here, because I do get calls and emails from all three of you every day about what you need to see, and this renovation is part of that larger context that you mentioned. We've supported neighborhood housing services with our CDBG funds to do the facade improvements that are so important to the Gwynns Falls Parkway itself. Thank you. And we filed the receivership actions on the balance of all the vacants. So those homeowners there who are getting their facades improved will not be next to vacant buildings going forward. This building will be renovated. Those buildings will be renovated. We took down some key buildings. 3409 Parkwood is down. It was a kind of a real troublesome, roofless, large, multifamily building around the corner from us. Mayor and I were here with everybody celebrating the groundbreaking at Metro Heights. Parks and People did a fantastic job renovating the former superintendent's building. There's the Park Circle. The Park Circle improvements are happening. right up the block at the corner where Reisterstown and Park Heights meet, there's a phenomenal amount of activity happening around here. And I know that we have responded and imminently will be doing the demolitions that were requested on Bryant, right behind Auchentoroly Terrace, which have created some mischief by being being up on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
There's so much going on here, and we're also receiving all the other receiving the row homes, caddy corner across from 3409, that's down now. The row of vacant houses there, we expect all those to be renovated. So Dan, you kicked off a lot of activity. This is, I think, representative of so much that's positive around here. And I'm so happy to be part of the mayor's team and to work with everybody to get this phone. And I know Jackie knows where I live, so she'd hold me accountable one way or another. So thank you so much for inviting me here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, and now for the moment we've all been waiting for it, but I just do want to also recognize, I think there's somebody from Senator Van Hollen's office. Is that somebody here? Thank you. Thank you for joining us today, and thanks to the senator. And to my right is City Councilman John Bullock, who has ventured out of his district in solidarity for good things happening in West Baltimore. All right, so with you all in the front, I'm going to step back. I'll hand some scissors out, and then you all do your thing.
3,